Hey, Will King here. Today on the Build Show, we're taking a look at some sub-slab insulation we're doing on a job site. Now, we're here in Florence, Alabama on Wilson Lake on a really neat job site we have going on. And this is our first time using a stone wool sub-slab insulation. And we're also going to be using it on the exterior of the house. And we're going to talk about that some today too. And the plastic details of what's going over the top of this insulation and how we're going to terminate that before we pour our concrete. Let's get out here and take a look at it. So we're going to shoot this video today inside this safe room. We have a crazy high wind today coming in off the lake, and it's just going to be hard to talk about it inside the wind. So we're inside this safe room, and by the way, this is actually the front porch above us, and this is actually something that we've been doing on most of our house plans, is incorporating our safe room underneath our front porch. You know, there's several reasons for that. We talk about backfill and then trying to pour a slab over our overdig. It just ends up creating problems. We have just found that it's easier to work with our draftsman or an architect to make sure they're speccing out a safe room inside their basement underneath their front porch. So that's where we're standing today. And you can see below me, we actually have the insulation already laid. Now we're using a Comfort Board 80. It's 1.5 inches thick. That's about a 6.3 R value, and that's going to be below our slab. And so the idea being that it's just going to give us a good thermal break underneath our slab to help just increase the comfort in this basement. Now, this is a poured wall basement. We have, I think they're 8 and 10 inches thick poured walls on this house. And actually on the outside of it, after we get it framed, we're using the same Comfort Board 80 on the exterior. So that'll be another 1.5 inches exterior insulation. But today we're talking about the basement specific. Now, one thing we noticed this morning is that, you know, the wind is blowing hard here today, and that's why we're standing in here. But compared to foam board, this was actually a lot easier to handle. It didn't blow away from you like a foam board does when you pick it up. So that was one thing that I noticed. And also the guys that are laying it, they're our guys, and this is the first time they've installed Comfort Board underneath the slab. And this is about 1,800 feet of basement behind us, but they had it done by 10 o'clock this morning. They're just mopping up a few small details, but beyond that, they were able to get it done in about 2.5 hours. So as far as speed goes, it's a very quick application. So we talk about, you know, our gravel heights, our slab heights, and how to determine, you know, how to use sub-slab insulation. That was all the questions in my head when we were trying to figure everything out as far as, you know, how high for our concrete guys to prep the gravel. So 4-inch slab, and that we're doing that from the footer height. So that'll be the top, 4 inches up from our footer will be the top of our concrete. So we stopped our gravel at the top of the footer. And so the Comfort Board then went over the gravel, over the top of the footers, as you can see, and then up, we have a piece turning up the wall. We're basically just blocking that thermal bridge from the outside. Now, inside the basement, you know, back here on the deep part of the basement, it may not matter as much because we're so far underground. But out on the daylight side, facing the lake, especially with all the cold wind coming in the wintertime, having that thermal break, you know, the decoupling the slab and having a thermal break is going to be a big increase in comfort. Now, the 4-inch slab's marked on our concrete wall, and our guys are going to be cutting these side pieces off at the mark for our concrete. And that'll be the final, I guess, detail of cutting in the Comfort Board. So then after that, our moisture barrier will go down. And for this job, we're using just a 10 mil plastic. It's nothing out of the ordinary. You can get it from your local supply house. We're going to tape all of our seams to try to get a really good barrier there. And we're actually going to come up the wall over the Comfort Board and then terminate it to the concrete all the way around with a nice Sega fin trim tape to get a good bond to the concrete. And, you know, I used to not take sealing our plastic too serious, and then as we talk about radon, that's a big one in our area. So in North Alabama, we're actually some of the highest radon levels anywhere in the country. So that's just helping to make a nice sealed membrane to help keep that below the slab so that our radon pipe can do its job. We know we have a project manager of ours who built his own house about 2 years ago. You know, it's not a basement, it's just a slab on grade house, but he didn't do any sub-slab insulation, and actually he has finished concrete floors, and you can tell a big difference in the wintertime when you're barefooted or in your socks. The temperature change in the concrete as you get close to the exterior Now in Alabama, you know, we don't have that much cold weather. We are in North Alabama, we are in climate zone 3, but it's very important. And he's even had on super cold nights or cold mornings, he's even seen some condensation. So it really got our attention and got us thinking that this is a big priority for us to think about. And so that's why we decided to start making the transition to doing sub-slab insulation. So guys, we decided to come on out here and try this, even though the wind's still blowing, but you can tell, I wanted to show you this detail in person and kind of walk you through it, but you can see the 4x8 sheets of this Comfort Board 80 underneath me and how it stops about that 1.5 inches short of the concrete wall. And then we have the vertical transition piece coming up to be sure to decouple that slab, and then we'll have insulation continuing on up. But actually, you know, one thing to point out here is that we're going to have an inch air gap between this poured wall and a 2x4 wall that we're going to frame on the inside. So stopping this short is important so that our bottom plate of our stud wall can sit on top of this slab completely. Now they'll shoot this concrete wall with closed cell foam actually, and then we'll have a nice bat inside of our 2x4 wall for additional R value. So that's how this is going to work. But here in a second, we're going to have the plastic coming across and actually coming up, and then we're going to terminate it here with our Siga tape. Now, some of you may not use header blocks like we do, but this is how we form up or lay these blocks to form up for our slab on a daylight end of a basement like what we're at today. But when you talk about detailing out the comfort board around these, you can tell it's a little bit tricky. But what we've decided to do is stop the Comfort Board 80 here at the inside of our header block. We pack the cells with Comfort Board, and then on the outside, we're actually going to make sure we have a piece here and coming up the outside of our wall that's framed here before they pour this slab too. So that way you still get the full thermal bridge protection from Comfort Board, but it's just going to have to be on the outside of the block versus our poured walls where you see it on the inside like we're detailing it over here on this side. So I hope you learned a little bit today about sub-slab insulation and how to use Comfort Board below your slab, and even with a walkout basement using something like header block and poured walls and how to detail that, and even how the plastic gets applied. So those are all questions that I had when I first started going down the journey of using sub-slab insulation to get those details right. So I just wanted to make sure we shared it with you. But just remember, iron sharpens iron, so keep grinding, keep watching these videos, and we'll see you right here on The Build Show.